Scriptify and Phone Oracle. I like that. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Transform Sales Podcast Sales Software Review Series. Today, we have Devanshu, CEO at Scriptify and Phone Oracle, we must add. How you doing today, Devanshu?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for joining us today. And today, we're going to talk about Scriptify for cold prospecting. So for all of you all out there that may have SDR teams, maybe you have full cycle sales reps that are out there making cold calls. Today, you're going to learn a little bit about how you might be able to use Scriptify to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of your cold prospecting motions. Let's get right into it then, Devanshu. Let's talk to us a little bit about, because we like to go ahead and do the problem solution thing, right? So would you tell us a little bit about what some of your current customers, or what are some alternatives that your current customers were using typically before coming on to Scriptify?
So I'm going to be honest, most of our customers are not using any, dialing solution at this point in time. They mostly come from sales engagement tools like Apollo, Outreach, SalesLoft, right? Or they come from, tools like just CRMs like HubSpot or Salesforce. And they're dialing from those platforms. Like Apollo has a dialer, Outreach has a dialer. It's basically a click to dial system. And that's what most of our customers are using. And that's where they come from. And essentially, Scriptify plugs into those solutions. Like, for example, you can pull in your due call tasks from Apollo into Scriptify, or, tasks from a HubSpot or Outreach or anywhere else, and dial within Scriptify. There's solid reasons of why you want to do that I'm going to come to. But that's what most of our customers, that's where they live, essentially.
Got it. So what challenges were those customers experiencing that Scriptify helped them overcome once they onboarded into the platform?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the big challenges that is not talked about a lot, and I'm actually pretty sure that it's not talked about on your podcast or anywhere else, and it's called cold calling infrastructure. In fact, I'm the first one on LinkedIn that's just been talking about it. Like, why do you need it? Now, Tony, I'm sure you're familiar with things like email infrastructure, right? When your emails don't go to their people's inboxes, or when your reply rates are down, you often think about, oh, it must be my email infrastructure. I must not have my inboxes warming up, or my SPF, DKIM, DMARC records might be messed up, or those types of things, right? That's what you think first. And then you think, okay, if all that's fine, then it might be my copy or something else. But the first thing that it gets to your mind is it must be some kind of infrastructure. Am I using the right inboxes or whatnot? There's tons of terms that now people are kind of familiar with. But and in fact, most SEPs, Tony, like Apollo, they give you 15 inboxes per SDR, right? You need 15 inboxes, and then SPF, DMARC, DKIM records for all the inboxes, rotate between them, warm them up, do all sorts of things to just get the emails delivered, right? But the problem with Apollo is when it comes to dialing, it just slaps you with a VoIP number, just a single VoIP number, and that's it, right? And there's a prevailing belief amongst SDRs and everyone else that your pickup rates are down because no one seems to be picking up their phones. It's entirely, people think it's entirely dependent on their prospects' mood. No one wants to answer the phones. And they just shift the blame to the prospects and then be done with that. No one thinks that, oh, it might be my infrastructure might be messed up when it comes to cold calling. People don't even think in that direction, right? So that's what Scriptify does. So we are first tool that takes care of your cold calling infrastructure. On top of that, of course, we are a conversation platform. We will get you more conversations, right? But that's the first thing that we do. We make sure that your infrastructure is right.
So what would be the equivalent then of the, when we talked about that, you mentioned some concrete examples when it came to email, right? The DKIM, your SPF. What would be some of those equivalents for cold calling infrastructure?
Yeah, so for just like you have with emails, SPF, DKIM records, etc., for phone numbers, you first need a clean number to begin with. So like just I can draw like one-to-one equivalences between these two. So for example, when it comes to emails, your domain IP is very important. Like what IP are you sending? That IP could be blacklisted. The same
Mm-hmm.
thing could be true for your phone numbers. Your phone number has a history. It's not the first time when you slap together with a VoIP number. It's not the
Mm-hmm.
first time that you get a VoIP number. It has a history. It might have been used by someone else for spam, malicious purposes, and now it's assigned to you. So it's similar to like a domain IP where you carry forward like an old IP and you're just
Mm-hmm.
doomed from the beginning. That's what happens with cold email. So that's number one, right? So you need clean phone numbers with no history to begin with. And that's just the first part. Now, when it comes to SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, these three things essentially tell the companies that, yeah, the email is coming from a registered business, from a legitimate company in the US, and so on and so forth. Same thing's true with phone numbers, and those things are called stir shaken. So that's one of the protocols that's used by US to make sure that this number is registered to this particular business. And if it's
Mm-hmm.
not, you're doomed from the beginning, right? So stir shaken protocol is something that needs to be done for every number. There's no way to do that in Apollo. There's no way to do that in HubSpot. Nothing, right? The next
Mm-hmm.
thing, just like DMARC, etc., there's something called CNAM in phone numbers. So that's
Hmm.
essentially caller ID. People
Yeah.
tend to think that no one is picking up their phones. That the reason is because there's no verified badge, there's no caller ID that shows up on their phone. It's just a VoIP number, right? So
Yeah.
CNAM is also very important when it comes to infrastructure. And so clean numbers, on top of that adds stir shaken, on top of that adds CNAM, and then you need to constantly monitor this number for spam. So like you can't just leave it there. Just like with emails, you constantly have to see if your inboxes are good. Same
Right.
thing, you got to check your health of your numbers constantly. And there's tons of other things that needs to be done on an ongoing basis versus the initial infrastructure that we also take care of.
That's interesting. I didn't know. I definitely was not thinking about phone infrastructure when doing cold calls. That's a lot of information that's actually new. And as I think about it, one of the things that comes over now is likely spam, right? So what resonated with me there is, oh, so that's how, on my iPhone, it's able to tell me it's likely spam because it's looking at the elements that you're talking about. Huh.
Exactly,
Very,
exactly.
very
Yeah.
cool. Well,
Yeah.
with no
So
further ado, let's go
yeah,
ahead and let's at least open up the platform and we'll go ahead at least so we can continue this conversation in the context
absolutely.
of specific features in there that help us address this phone infrastructure.
Yeah, let's do it.
All
I think
right.
my screen is already shared. So yeah.
Let's see. All right. There you go.
Awesome. So that's the hope that you guys can see my screen. Okay.
Yep. You're
Yeah. That's the dialer. Basically, we are on the settings page. I don't have to tell this, but it integrates with all your tools like HubSpot, Salesforce, whatever you have to pull your contacts from there. But
mhm.
as I said, what's important is to have clean numbers to begin with. So you're essentially starting at a good point. You have safe numbers. And by the way, just to tell you a stat that we have seen,
Mhm.
this is a report that we recently prepared. This is just comparing the pickup rates of HubSpot and Apollo for some of our customers who volunteered their data, where we actually tracked the rates, the pickup rates of Apollo and HubSpot. And you can kind
Mhm.
of see that how quickly it falls down as they dial. So it begins with a decent rate. Now the beginning could be bad as well, right? If you could be assigned, bad numbers to begin with, and then you
Mhm.
don't even have like a good start. But you can see how quickly it falls. But with Scriptify, just to quickly go over this, we have actually tracked their pickup rates, and you can see Scriptify's pickup rate stays constant, like it's consistent 10%, and it keeps hovering around that. It never falls down like any other SEPs. So this is just a quick
That's a
point that
quick
I want.
kind of something that validates this idea that the
Exactly.
only difference we're highlighting there is the quality of the phone numbers being used to make the dials.
Exactly. So there's that's one thing, right? To make sure that the quality is good. So if I go to the dialer and pop open my phone numbers, you can see there might be small, text might not be readable, but it says shake and stir, CNAM, clean. So now this is a process that's kind of tedious, and we do this for all our customers. So it requires some form filling on the back end from our end. So we take care of all that for you guys. The next thing is that's very important is your data that you're dialing. That's often bad. In fact, we have done a study comparing several data vendors like Seamless, Apollo, and all these vendors, and all of them have around 20 to 30% bad numbers in there. So essentially, what
And when you
happens
say
is
when you
that
say bad numbers, now we're talking about the actual quality of the contact data for the person you're going to call.
exactly. So we're talking about the contact data, the phone numbers that you get from these tools like Apollo or Seamless, and we've consistently tracked about 20 to 30% being bad. Now, what do I mean by bad? It means that there could be busy, constant busy numbers. Sometimes it happens disconnected, or the line is no more active, right? Those types of numbers, and it could also mean wrong numbers, like you're calling John and someone else picks up. That's also a bad number. And usually, what happens is when you're dialing these bad numbers, your conversation length is very short, right?
Mm-hmm.
Either
Mm-hmm.
it's like split second, it just cuts off and dials the next person, or you're dialing this person and it turns out to be a wrong person. I mean, how long are you going to talk to them? Like 10 seconds, maybe, 12 seconds at most. Carriers manage this. Carriers make sure, basically see what kind of length conversations are you having, and they would begin flagging your numbers because it's not normal, right? You dial your dad,
Really?
you dial your mom, your phone number, your call duration is usually pretty long, like 1 to 3 minutes at least. But when you're dialing these bad numbers constantly and you have no way to validate these numbers,
Mm-hmm.
your phone number reputation goes down pretty quickly. So that's something that we take care of as well. So if I go to the leads section,
Mm-hmm.
and if I pop open any of these, like in case I've got this example where you have multiple phone numbers per prospect, that could be a case.
Right.
We have something called pickup prediction. It's essentially an inbuilt list validation algo. And what this does is it scores your entire list and surfaces all the good numbers. So what it's going to do is it's going to check whether the line is active or not by directly pinging the telcos. It's going to check whether this number matches this name or not. Is it on a
Yep.
family plan? Does it match the name, etc.? Is it always busy? Has this person picked up their call in the past like 1 or 2 months or not? And this is not based on crowdsourcing data. It's directly pinging telcos to see, certain APIs we have access to, and it will
Mm-hmm.
assign a score to these numbers like A to F. So when you
Yes.
go to the dialer, you're essentially, let's say I import these numbers, like multiple phone numbers, I can
Mm-hmm.
choose to just dial A's and the B's from Shake and Stir approved numbers. So essentially, you're dialing clean data with extremely clean numbers. And this we have found out to double or triple the pickup rates that you're getting already. So we
You
are
know what?
already like,
This is
sorry, yeah.
this is for me. I gotta make a statement here because this is big for me. And from this context of, I remember there's a company that got acquired actually by Zoom Info some time ago, and I remember one of the things that they were focused on was pulling data from different data sources.
Mhm.
And the idea there is that I might have different numbers, so now you're kind of trying to hone in on what's the right number, what's going to be a positive data source for you. But the thing that was missing at that time, and I remember just looking at maybe, I want to call it like 3 years ago, I was like,
Mhm.
okay, well, I got information from multiple data sources. How do I know which one I want to use? They just left
Exactly.
that wide open. In this case, you guys have this data could come in from multiple data sources, but the fact that it's graded on the
Mhm.
basis of these, what we call it, stir, shaken, and these other things that have to do
Yeah.
with the quality of your phone numbers or whether you're spam or not, that's the thing that was missing. And now you guys actually have it. So now I could actually just go ahead and get rid of some things that are a C and say, I'm not calling numbers that have a C rating. I'm going to focus
It's
on
a waste of
zero.
time. Exactly.
Huh.
You're just channel validating your list and you're finding out, okay, this guy has 5 numbers. Which one do I dial? Because if
Mm-hmm.
a person has 5 numbers and you got 500 people, that's like 2,500 numbers to dial. Why would you
Mm-hmm.
do that, right? You first
Right.
validate your list and then dial those numbers. So now we have reached a point, Tony.
Mm-hmm.
I've told you that first you dial validated list from clean numbers. We are already at a point where you're getting like triple the pickup rates that you normally get with Apollo, right? But we can go beyond this. And this is a point where you use something like an ultra low latency human detection model. So we've got two human detection machine learning models that detect whether it's a human or an answering machine on the other side. But the advantage here, Tony, here is you're not dialing 10 people at the same time like a typical parallel dial. You can, right? Scriptify does allow you to do that, but you don't have to because you have achieved a good calling infrastructure. You can choose to do single line dialing with a low latency human detection model. And when you make these dials, Scriptify connects you to the call within 1.5 seconds as soon as a human picks up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So unlike any other, parallel dialing solution that takes like 8 seconds to connect you to the call because you're dialing 5, 6 people, you've done your homework here already. So you can
Mm-hmm.
just use the single line dialing. And I can show you an example of how quick it is. In fact, I've got a demo list right here. And low latency, single line dialing, clean numbers. So I can just start dialing, and let me see
Mm-hmm.
if my phone is here. And this is my number, by the way. So you can see how quick it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I've pressed start dialing, and it will begin dialing. And as soon as it sees an answering machine, it's going to shift the entire task to the background. And it's completely hands free. It begins to transcribe what's happening on the other side, shifted it to the background. In the background, it's going to wait for 30 seconds for the beep, leave a pre recorded voicemail, complete your task, update the CRM, do all that, but that's all taken care of in the background. So as it
Mm-hmm.
continues to dial down the list.
That's great.
So
That actually, so now the deal is that it's got the automation going. You don't lose track of it. So on some
yeah,
dialers, I believe it makes the multiple calls, but you can kind of lose track of do I have an attempt on that person or not? And in
yeah.
this case, it'll go all the way through. Now, let me ask you a question. Will
Let me
the
let
will
me
that
let me pick it up and show you real quick how
okay,
quick it is. Hello, there you go.
you're into it. Boom. There was hardly any time there.
So,
Huh.
so that's the advantage where you've done your homework, cleaned your list, dialing from stir shaking. You don't need to parallel dial 10 people. It's like
Mhm.
that quick.
You know what?
Sorry, you had a question. Yeah.
Fun fact here that relates to this is when I receive these calls, and obviously a lot of times I'm only picking up the calls that show that the person's already in my phone book on my phone.
Hmm.
But then also sometimes there's like an area code or something I'm recognizing because I know that maybe I talked to someone, maybe they're calling me from a different number. So once in a while I'll pick up because it doesn't say might be spam, and I'll go ahead and pick it up. But
Hmm.
these days, I noticed because of so many, I don't know if they're called robo dialers or anything
Yeah.
like that, but those ones where you've got the automated message on the other side, or it calls and then like you hear nothing and it just hangs up.
That's the problem. That's called dead air connects. And that's why you need to do all these things combined. So you don't have to dial 10 people. That's why it happens, because sometimes two people pick up at the same time, right?
Yes.
And it's gonna hang up, or it's just gonna wait for the other person and you're just hearing nothing. And
Mm-hmm.
then you hear the other call. So that's why validate your list, dial from stir shaken. You're already at 8% pickup rate, and then combine that together strategically with a low latency answering machine detection model. And that's how you maximize your TAM without pissing off people, without creating so much collateral damage. Because often what happens with parallel dialers is you're loving it for the first 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and then you realize, oh damn, I've made like 15,000 calls and I've exhausted everyone, pissed off a lot of people. I've booked a lot of meetings. And then people often switch to single line dialing, but they don't have the infrastructure that Scriptify gives them, like, validating the list, stir shaking, all of that. So that's the kind of the advantage here, essentially.
Huh. And so yeah, yeah. So to that point, then that means that I was really wondering about it. And sometimes there are all these different, theories might have like, hey, maybe they're just grabbing a piece of my voice and then they're gonna turn into some AI thing and start doing other things with it. But what's the term you said again? Is that the core of that delay?
The
The
delay is, it could be, first of all, they
net air I wrote net air connect in my note.
dead air is one of the
Dead
problems
air.
that with parallel
Dead
dialing, right?
dead air. There it is. So dead air. And that has to do with the latency that you just showed us, right?
The latency, yeah, the latency is bad, and the reason that you have to make that many dials is because you don't have good numbers. So a lot of people are just not picking up, right? So, and you tend to believe that, okay, if I just dial more people, people might answer, right? Instead of going, taking a step back and focusing, okay, do I have the right infrastructure for people to pick up? And if you have
Huh.
it, then you don't need to parallel dial. You just have a low latency single line dialing. It's completely hands free, as you saw, right? It's just
Yep.
doing it pretty quickly, but it's still not creating that collateral damage that you normally get with a parallel dialer.
Got it. Got it. So yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. Going back to, so I got to the point where sometimes I'll go ahead and just I answer and I don't say
Mhm.
anything for a while and see if it hangs up. So that's the other side of it. So this is cool. Like we covered today on the cold calling piece, and obviously this looks like we'll go into this, but it feels like when it comes to cold calling, we got the piece of connectivity that's just like the deliverability rates
Yeah,
on your emails. And I feel like
exactly.
this is because of some of the understanding or some of the pre-research I did on Scriptify. I feel like we could hit a couple parts here, but we're going to need to do another call on cold calling, another one, just to go into now all of a sudden the quality of the sales conversations features that
Absolutely.
Scriptify
Yeah.
enables to really give it a fair whack. But I'll let you go ahead with some of the demo here, and then we'll dive deeper into some of those pieces later.
Yeah, we can dive deeper in the enablement side of things, and
Mm-hmm.
this is going to be useful to you guys because you have a platform where people hire SDRs from to make sure that they're performing the best they can. It's very important for us to focus on enablement stuff, like how do
Right.
they, have quality conversations over the phone. And one of the things, since this thing is already on, popped up, one of the things is the talk track feature in Scriptify. So
Mm-hmm.
this is something that happens in a lot of dialers. You're just dialing through the list and it suddenly connects you with someone. Just like Scriptify, you will have a lot of conversations with this tool. So the problem is if you're a new SDR and if you're not used to, doing this a lot, and SDR also has a high churn, by the way. So every 2 years,
Yeah.
the SDR is now an AE. So you always have new SDRs.
Right.
so so
Right.
you always need to constantly, make sure that they're having quality conversations. This talk track feature is very critical. So if it connects with a call, SDRs often fumble. Oh, who am I speaking to? And they have all this information on there. Okay, what do I say? Who am I talking to? Okay, it's John. Hi, John. Blah blah. Blah. Instead, Scriptify pops up exactly what they're supposed to say, and this can be programmed in the talk track feature. So, like for example, in this case, it has replaced the prospect's name by the actual name. John,
Yep.
hi, this is Dev calling from Scriptify. We have never spoken before, but I was hoping you had 30 seconds to hear me out. Not a good time. Send me an email. Sure, go ahead. If they say that, moves to the next part. Hey, so I saw that you oversee the sales and RevOps at Wilson Corp, which is the company. So it's pulled that in. I'm
Mm-hmm.
assuming you guys have reps cold calling. Yes. Moves to the next part. So you can essentially execute a perfect cold call every single time without fumbling, and it will
Mm-hmm.
give you that boost for the initial, the opener, and then you can get into the call. You don't have to follow the exact, talk track. Now,
And you know,
um,
this is actually that for me highlights another problem with power dialers, right? Because I
yeah,
don't know, for those of you all who might not have used a power dialer, besides that delay in connecting, to Devanshu's point, I mean, I see it where it's just if you're dialing 10 numbers at a time, more than
yeah,
10 numbers at a time, when that pickup happens, you know, it's easy when you're on that call to be thinking, this is going to be another one that nobody picks up on. So when that pickup happens, it's a surprise. And now you have to lock in and get back into mode. So what this is instantly helping with is just that stutter. Boom. Now I'm
exactly,
making multiple calls. When it connects, bam. I don't even have to think that much. And it's just to get the ball rolling. So I mean,
exactly.
that's big right there as well.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so you just get into the call and then you can, keep going. The other things that you can do, by the way, on this panel, since it's open, is let's say, John is ready to book a meeting. Often what SDRs have to do is pop open a new tab, constantly go back and forth between, okay, this is John, this is the email, this is the note, blah, 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 add my account executive, etc. And that takes a lot of time. John could also be in Pacific, you can be in Mountain, and then you'll have to also do the calculation in your head. Okay, this guy is in Pacific, this is the blah blah blah. That takes a lot of time, and usually it's advisable to get them approved, get them to accept the invite on the call itself. But if you're taking forever to do that, it's not going to happen, right? So we have this book meeting that integrates with your HubSpot and Google Calendar. And if I click on this shows this is, since it's a demo call, it doesn't show their local time, but it will show their local time. It will show your time, and you can have templates loaded up with the right notes, with the AEs that you want to add. And all I have to do here, watch closely, click,
Mm-hmm.
it fills in all the information, adds the AE, fills in the notes, customizes it to the prospect. I just have to click save, and the meeting's booked. That's all I have to do. Right? So that quick.
But wait a second. So wait a second. So you're telling me that you've already, so I could already in my setup, I could connect maybe to Google Meetings. Let's say I use Google Meetings
Exactly.
for my meetings. I connect that to Scriptify. So
Hmm.
then I go ahead and I have my call because Scriptify already knows I'm on a call with Devanshu, right?
Yeah.
Then if if we get to the part where they successfully say, yes, I want to book a meeting, I just have to
Yeah.
click a button. It's going to
That's all you
send
have to do.
the mhm.
Yeah,
It's going to send the
exactly.
meeting invitation with the stuff I want in there. And without me leaving Scriptify, it's in our systems.
In your
All right.
system, exactly. So because what we saw was, every meeting has some level of customization. Like there's an account executive that needs to be added, there's some specific notes that need to be made. If you do that
Mhm.
already in the settings and build your templates, then all you have to do is just click wherever, and it will also show you the free busy schedule of your AEs as well. So just click, book a meeting, dial next, you're on to the next call. You don't have to like switch tabs and do all that you know
So that's on the that's you now you highlight the part on the handoff, right? So it's hey, maybe there's multiple AEs that I can hand off to. I'm the SDR. I want to be able to quickly know where there's an opening, so I'm not slowed down talking to this prospect on the line. And you're saying
Exactly.
not only am I integrating my own calendar here, but if I'm an SDR, for example, doing cold calling and handoffs, I've got my AEs calendars in there, so everything
Exactly.
is seamless. Boom, speakers. Huh,
Exactly.
nice. I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I tell you what, why don't we wrap this up here? Because I've taken some notes. And
Yeah.
oh, wait, before we do that, actually, no, let's go ahead and transition into that into the setup. So now we've got all these cool features we could use to make
Mhm.
our cold prospecting and SDR teams more efficient from the standpoint of calls being received, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and recap a little bit here.
Yeah.
Challenge. Using phone numbers that are marked as spam is a challenge you could be experiencing that's affecting your connect rates. Scriptify
Yeah.
is addressing that challenge. Delay on caller side, that delay that happens when you're using a power dialer and oh crap, somebody picked up over here. The difference between when the person picks up and when they finally hear the voice of your caller, that's a challenge that gets
Yeah.
addressed. That affects that, right? And that last one is I got from this session knowing what to say when a call finally connects. Boom,
Hmm.
Scriptify is helping with that. So
Yeah.
and obviously other features come after that. So let's talk now then about the setup that's required to quickly get going and taking advantage of the features that eliminate those three challenges.
Yeah. It's super simple. Yeah. I mean, you can probably see it in the UI. It's like we've made it as simple for the SDRs as possible. What you need to do is get on a demo with me. It takes us 30 minutes to set this up for the team. And that's pretty much it. And then after that, we will take your EIN number in the US if you have it. It's called Employer Identification Number. That's
Mhm.
all we need from you. Once we have it, we will begin the process of getting all your numbers approved for Stir Shaken, CNAM, Clean. There's also grades in Stir Shaken. So like we have really good relationships with carriers. So we have A grade level attestation for all the numbers. We'll help you achieve all that within the first week while you can continue dialing. So we can do that in the background, and our team takes care of all that. So it's that quick. It's pretty easy to set up. If you want to integrate your HubSpot or anything, it just takes one click. So click manage, it's done. That's all it takes.
Hmm. Now
Yeah.
let's talk then about so the setup. Scriptify team helps with the setup. That's all it takes from the standpoint of connecting things. What do you see from folks as far as when you think about phone infrastructure and just their process for doing cold calling? Are there any other things that one can start preparing if they haven't used a power dialer before, or if they've had bad experiences with any dialer before, even just a regular number doing one-to-one dials. What are some pieces of advice you might give them to help them have a better experience as they scale their cold calling with Scriptify or
So
any
our
other platform? In fact, let me say
yeah.
it this way: whether they use Scriptify or anything else, this is what you need to do to make sure your cold calling works for you.
So if you choose to not use Scriptify, let's say, if you want to just make cold calling work for you, the most important advice that I will give you is take care of your cold calling infrastructure. That means contact HubSpot's team. They're not going to respond. I'm sad to say we have seen that many times, but whatever dialer you're using, contact them. Try to get your numbers approved for stir, shake, and CNAM. Make sure it's clean. Have some kind of system that validates your leads. So in this case, we are the only dialer in the market that does this. So I don't really know of a service that does this. You can hire people from Upwork, I guess, to call your leads to see if they're valid numbers. You can do that um, to
Yeah.
make sure that you're dialing the good numbers, essentially, because small call durations tends to kill your number reputation. So no matter what you do, make sure you do that. And also leave voicemails. And the reason I say that is because if you just hang up when someone picks up the phone and it turns out to be a voicemail, the call duration is small, right? It's 2 seconds. Okay, it's a voicemail, just hang up. Don't do that. What Scriptify does is for every single call, it's going to let it continue in the background so that the duration is long. If you're using any other solution, make sure that you listen to the whole call, wait for the end beep, or at least stay silent if you don't want to leave a voicemail. Stay silent for 20 seconds and then hang up the call. This way you can save your number reputation. And no one talks about this, but it's very important. So yeah,
What's the amount
that's
of time? What's the amount of time that they're using? It's like, is it like 120 seconds, or is it something else that's kind of like the difference between what's too short or not?
So, I mean, just think about what a normal person does. We don't have any hard data on what's too short, but we have seen this, like we have measured this for the people who hang up quickly versus where people are actually leaving voicemails or just silent. There's no hard data, but yeah, it's usually what do you do normally? Like, do you talk for a minute or two usually on your calls? Just, have a voicemail of 30 seconds or something. That's going to be good because you've waited for the end beep, you left a voicemail. That's a decent sized call, essentially.
Got it. Got it. And then just before I go into my last question that has to do with kind of evaluating this purchase, I'm interested in the cost, the price point, right? Because one of the things when you start getting into the power dialers and some of this also is the cost of getting your team running with it. And there's times when, for example, some of the things we just mentioned, one, it's probably better for somebody to practice getting comfortable with the best practices of cold calling, almost I guess we could call it like your cold calling health and your cold calling
Yeah.
infrastructure, like you just said, right? You want to make sure you have a good cold calling infrastructure before you scale into a tool that may have that you may need to be more advanced to get great ROI out of, right? So let's just talk a little bit about that price point right now versus other tools that do similar things. Where's Scriptify and how does that kind of compare?
Yeah, so we are priced similar to Orem or Nooks, right? So it's basically $350 a month per rep, and it's cheaper. Basically, you get 2 months free if you pay annual. And again, as you said, before scaling, you need to take care of your cold calling infrastructure. Um, that's the advice. But the problem is that the CRMs that you work with, the SCPs that you work with, just don't do this for you. So they're just going to slap a VoIP number. They're just going to ignore you when you reach out to them for, okay, is my number stir shaken? Is my list validated? They'll just ignore you. That's not the, thing that they do. So essentially, that's the price, similar to Nooks and Orem, essentially.
Awesome. So then even with that, I mean, price is kind of subjective in that sense, right? Because the deal is I'd say I'll throw in there, and as we go into this, we're going to roll into what KPIs should they use to evaluate success with their software. But I would say, as we talk about that, one is you do need to know your numbers so that you understand what the cost
Absolutely.
of a conversion is, right? A lot of
Yeah.
times we're looking at these different things, and frankly, we don't really get down to if I make 100 calls, how many out of 100 calls turn into a booked meeting? And then how many of the book meetings convert into an actual sale, and at what average contract value? And if you do that, you can come back now and actually start doing a realistic assessment as to how much you could afford to pay for, in this case, say, for example, a dialing software that you're going to use to drive those results, right? Because the price itself doesn't tell the story. If you're selling something where you're like, yo, like our average annual contract value is $100,000, then I mean, you could backwards engineer that to know, like, all right, if I could be making sure I'm calling from a number that is not deemed spam, it's got a good reputation score, I can make sure I'm calling the right numbers and eliminate the ones that aren't going to work.
Yeah.
And then my people are going to be calling and getting in contact with the right person more frequently, so that I can say how many of 100 of these higher quality calls could convert at 100,000 on an average contract value. I mean, you're going to come up with different numbers, and it can mean that you shouldn't wait. You could be costing yourself more money if you wait. So
absolutely, yeah, that makes sense. And we basically, you know, as you said, it works case by case basis. But what Scriptify guarantees is you will have more conversations. So whatever number of conversations you're having for every 100 calls, first of all, you will have, within the same 100 calls, you will have more conversations. That's what's surprise. That's what's different than, you know, parallel dialing in the traditional way, where the parallel dialing just tells you that, hey, you know, instead of 100 calls, you can make 1,000 calls, and then of course you're going to have more conversations. But what Scriptify says is not only you can do that, you can make 1,000 calls with Scriptify because it has all this human detection stuff. But even within those 100 calls, you will have more conversations. In fact, we have seen this. It's almost double the pickup rates with Scriptify because we have the right infrastructure for you. So you're essentially maximizing your TAM instead of burning through your TAM. And that's the difference, right? So, yeah.
So then we break that down to a few concrete KPIs that support that and allow someone to see that difference. What would those be in the case of Scriptify for cold prospecting?
So we have a 1-week trial with Scriptify. So people see the KPIs within the first week. And what we usually do is we onboard an SDR. So if you have a team of 10 SDR, we'll get one of your SDRs who's making cold calls on Scriptify to build a business case that, hey, is this SDR able to have more conversation, right, with Scriptify? And we basically start with two things. One is a clean number that is not stir, shake, and CNAM, right? Because that takes us a week to sort of register once they're onboarded, and that takes a lot of effort as well. But we start with a clean number and a valid list. So we validate their list and a clean number, and then we measure how many more conversations are they will have to have with Scriptify. And it's usually a lot more. It's like ridiculous, like 4 to 5 times, 6 times, sometimes more than what they would normally have with dialing from HubSpot or something like that. And then once they're on board, once they have bought into Scriptify, it increases even more because we get them grade A, shake and stir registration, CNAM, etc. So that goes up even more. So, and it continues to stay up like that, essentially.
So then I broke that down to say on my side, I'm looking at a higher connect rate. That's where we say what number out of 100 calls, for example, actually pick up. Yeah. Then we've got I should be seeing lower in my call dispositions. I should see fewer dispositions that say bad number, wrong person, any of those types of things, right?
Very true. Yeah. So it will go down from usually 30% is what we have tracked. We have tracked Seamless AI and a couple of others, and we've seen like about 20 to 30%. That goes down way down to like 5 or 6%, like really. So that's really useful. Yeah.
And then after that one, I look at my meeting conversions so that, so what that goes to for your thing is like, all right, that's where we see the lift. So the deal is that I can literally still convert 5 meetings, but the rate of conversion should be actually higher because of the fact that I'm connecting, talking to the right person. And now that 5, that means that instead of dialing 1,000 people, if I could get the same 5 conversions while dialing 500 people, I've already seen I've already doubled my effectiveness.
Exactly. And that's what you see in the first week. And then it goes, the good thing is after the trial, it gets even better. Usually, after the trial, things go bad. With parallel dialers, that often happens when you're just burned through your TAM. With Scriptify, it goes up because we do other things in the background to make sure your numbers are better quality.
Awesome. Well, listen, this has been very informative. I hope that people listening today got some good information that goes beyond even just the product, right, of Scriptify,
Right.
but also how to make sure you're doing some basic things that you could take action tomorrow and improve the effectiveness of your cold calling team. And I love how you said, Devanshu, you're not burning through your TAM. You want to make sure you're not burning through your TAM. You're maximizing the use of this. And I think another thing that came out, not pissing off callers, just by simply creating a bad calling experience. And by addressing that, you can get an immediate lift in performance for your cold calling teams. So
Exactly.
thank you, Devanshu. This is one of many, guys. We'll go ahead and dig into some other features as Devanshu already teed up right now. This is just the starting point. And after that, you can unlock some other features in Scriptify that can help take your cold calling, your performance of your sales teams to the next level. We'll cover that on another episode. I hope you're excited to see it because I am too. And in the meantime, we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you for tuning in.
All right.